So here's a pro tip for any politician. When you're going on a social media campaign and you're railing against the so-called rich, best not to wear a $5,000 Rolex watch while you're doing it. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Brynn, Lackie, and Lilley. Brynn, I'm of course referring to NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's recent social media post where he's sporting a fancy watch while railing against the rich and the elites and conservative billionaires. But there he is with the fancy watch. This guy, it was a long list, which we'll go through, of hypocrisy, does he not?
It's a bit of a whoops. I think there's a staffer who's probably in trouble for not noticing that.
There's also another one he came out with just a couple of days later. So obviously, Brynn, he got the memo because in that one, no watch.
Right. Right. And I think that's on the list of a number of times where you go, hold on, what you're saying isn't totally aligning with how you actually have built your life. So kind of the opposite of show, don't tell.
Brian, this is one of the things that Singh has become known for. You know, he wears the fancy bespoke suits and he drives fancy cars. Even when he was an NDP MPP here in Ontario, before he became NDP leader, he was always on the magazines, the fashion magazines. He does these ads for malls wearing the fancy suits. So it doesn't mix. And then I'm going to add another one into and throw another one into this. About a year ago, him and his wife took a gift of a nearly $1,900 rocking chair, and it's like, whoops, didn't know that. How did the NDP supporters put up with this?
Because they like champagne socialists. They don't mind you being rich as long as you rail against the rich, which Jagmeet Singh is obviously very good at. But you're right, he wears bespoke clothing. So these are tailored suits, the highest end suits. He used to drive a BMW Sportster around town with his folded bicycle in the trunk. He has several of these Rolex watches. And so it's actually odd to see him without it on. So, you know, he will try and slum it now and again. And in his new video talking about the rich CEOs and the food inflation and the corporate greed, he's in a t-shirt. And that's the latest one where he took the watch off. But, you know, he is who he is. And fine, I'm happy for him that he can buy really nice clothes, that he can buy really nice car. Stop railing against the rich. You is them.
Yeah, and I think, Brynn, I think that's the part that frustrates people the most is the obvious hypocrisy. But when you're out there on the campaign trail, you really want to be relatable to the average Canadian. And right now, inflation is through the roof. We can't afford our homes, can't afford mortgages. Some Canadians, sadly, too many Canadians are choosing between heating and eating. Yet the very leader of the party that is supposed to be representative of those Canadians is walking around and just not even aligning to those values. So how does that play out in the next election?
I mean, it's interesting because he's a politician, right? And I think that they say, okay, you know, they're the tried and true cliche of they say what they need to say to stay popular amongst their constituency continues. I think he says the right things to the people who want to believe in him, and he's the most palatable to the people on, you know, the border of that. So, you know, I think if there was truly someone going around walking and talking and living the life, I can't see how they would get anywhere. So I think probably there is a recognition that that's what you're going to deal with if you want a national party leader, that they're going to have to be palatable to everyone else too. So I think there's probably, it's just a necessary evil. But I think the hypocrisy is something that is hard to escape from. Mm-hmm. And especially now that, you know, with the alignment with Trudeau's government, I think it's very hard to sit and see it as anything but sort of a negotiation all the time.
All right, Brian, I'm going to give you the last word. Look, I will never forget the statement that Jagmeet Singh put out when Fidel Castro died. I'll never get past that alone.
Yeah.
But he does have this deal with the Liberals. So anytime, as we write in the Toronto Sun editorial, anytime he criticizes the Liberals, it is crying wolf. This is a guy that has decided to prop this party up at least till 2025. The very criticism that he's putting against Premier Doug Ford on just taking that tiny step towards trying to reduce wait times in the province of Ontario, working with the private clinics, which already happens, by the way. Jagmeet Singh wants to take credit for getting the big universal dental deal. Where does he think those procedures are taking place? In private dental clinics. Look, the hypocrisy knows no bounds with this guy.
It really doesn't. At least somebody called him out on that in his news conference and said, wait a minute, you're saying don't use private clinics at all, but you're talking about the dental program. His answer was, well, dentists are already private, they're already there, but I want to make it public. He essentially wants to make every dentist in the country a civil servant. It's a bizarre way for him to go. He has no authority. He has no ability to force anything. He called on Trudeau to force Doug Ford to stop what's already happening in British Columbia, where his riding is. He hasn't complained about the BC NDP government doing what Ford wants to do, but he demanded that Trudeau stop this. Trudeau turns around and gives an interview to the Toronto Star where he says, this is the kind of innovation we need. So Jagmeet's role is to prop him up, be his hype man, as Jamil Javani calls him, and just sit around waiting for the next order. That is all he can do. He has no authority, no power, and his party's not going anywhere in the polls or in the fundraising game.
You do have to wonder why the NDP doesn't just relent and fold themselves into the Liberal Party. Log on to Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what you think, and go to theTorontoSun.com and hit that subscribe button. You'll find coverage like this and more where you will not find anywhere else.